Ready? Okay. Good afternoon. So I wanted to further discuss the incident that occurred, the officer-involved shooting that occurred on Reed Street on Saturday morning. Had an opportunity myself and the command staff to meet with the family a little while ago. We had an opportunity to show them the body camera video, answer as many questions as we could, and took some time with the family and again expressed our condolences. We continue to express our condolences. It's a terrible loss for the family and friends. So our hearts do go out to the family. Another recap of what occurred and a few extra details that we can share. So on Saturday morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning, the 911 call came into dispatch to Charlie District officers about a man with a gun. A description was given of an individual. When officers arrived, and they arrived on scene within a couple of minutes of the call, they arrived on scene on Reed Street and encountered a man fitting that exact description. Camouflage, black male, had a shotgun in hand. Officers, the first two cars stopped about 50 feet away from where this individual was, took cover behind their car doors, and were giving numerous commands, telling him to drop the gun, ordering him to drop the gun. Third car pulled up on scene behind one of the other responding police cars. Again, they continued to give commands for about 25 to 30 seconds. At that point, the individual had the gun aimed at our police officers and fired one shot from a 12-gauge shotgun fired in the direction of our officers. At that point, our officers still did not return fire. The individual, they continued to give him commands to drop the gun. The individual at that point was doing something with the gun. You can see on the video where he raised it maybe at about a 45-degree angle, then lowered it back in the direction of officers again while officers were continuing to give him commands to drop the gun. Once the gun was leveled back at officers, at that point, officers discharged their firearms. There are two Buffalo police officers, uniformed police officers, that discharged their weapons. A total of 20 rounds were fired between the two officers, 14 by one officer, 6 rounds by the other officer. The individual was struck 2 times, 1 time in the chest, 1 time in the arm. It appears as though one of the rounds struck the stock of the shotgun. We believe that may have been the round that then entered his upper bicep area. Officers immediately began rendering aid. You can see on the body camera video, as you have, that officers were attempting to render aid. They called for med bags. Our patrol vehicles have medical bags in the cars. They were doing CPR. Multiple officers were shifting in and out, attempting CPR. They had immediately, after the shots were fired, another officer had called for AMR, an ambulance. The fire department was there within several minutes, took over attempts at life-saving measures. Ultimately, they were unsuccessful, and he was declared dead on scene. Mr. Edward Holmes, 58, of Buffalo, was pronounced dead on scene. As far as the 911 call, we have now affirmatively concluded that Mr. Holmes was, in fact, the 911 caller. That is also part of the video release. You have that. It's in the beginning of the video release. Mr. Holmes called 911 from his own cell phone, and he was calling as though he were a witness to somebody else. The call was that there is a man in the street with a gun, with a shotgun. The 911 call taker asked for a description. He provided a description that was of himself. At no point did he ever say that that was him. At no point did he ever make any claim that he was having a mental health crisis. Never asked for help. He simply called as though he were a witness to somebody else in the street that had that gun. Again, we have affirmatively concluded that from the 911 call, from the investigation that the homicide squad looked through and looked through his phone. As I said, you have the video. The video's been out. It's been released. This is our continued effort of transparency. We know there's been a lot of a narrative about what happened. As I said, he was shot 2 times, and we wanted that video to get out there. Again, that's why I came out Saturday afternoon to give as much as I could at that time. I'm here again today to give you as much as I have, which I think answers a few more questions. We have, again, as I said, 2 officers that fired their weapon. Those officers are both of the Charlie District, Ferry Fillmore District, identified as Andrew Lewis, who has 18 months on the department, and Joshua Slupinski, who has 5 years on the department. Again, these officers both work the day shift at Charlie District. And with that, I will take questions.
Having seen the video, we both seen the video at this point.
it absolutely was justified. They were met with an armed individual, was armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, fired directly at them, and yet these officers still were attempting to de-escalate, still telling them to drop the weapon, waited another approximately 8 seconds until the gun was leveled at them a second time before they opened fire. So they were absolutely justified in the use of deadly physical force. It's, as I said on Saturday, it's a terrible situation. It's terrible for the family, but this is also terrible for the officers that are put into a position that they had to discharge their firearms, and now they're dealing with the fact that they had a fatal shooting. So it's something that they're going to have to deal with.
But to hear 20 rounds, is 20 rounds a justifiable response?
We are taught to shoot to end the threat. So I know there's some talk out there, you shoot somebody in the leg, shoot somebody in the arm. You're taught to shoot center mass and shoot to end the threat. When you've got someone that's armed with a deadly weapon, is armed with a gun, you're going to shoot until that threat is over. You have to be very careful when you're shooting to do your best to aim for center mass, not try to, hit an arm or a leg. And these are also very tense, rapidly escalating situations.
Were there any other 911 calls?
There was no other 911 call.
Can you clarify, when you said Mr. Holmes shot at officers, that was a direct shot? There was a reporter thought that he fired a shot in the air as opposed to at officers. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so when you look at the video and you're able to break it down a little further, and we can zoom in on some of that, you can see that the gun was leveled right at the officers. We also have, after talking to the officers that were there, when the weapon went up in the air, and you can see that when the part of the video that we zoomed in on, and that's a part of the video release, you can see the gun come up at about a 45-degree angle and then came back down again. We now know, we knew after we collected the weapon that it jammed. So when he fired the first round, it's a semi-automatic shotgun. When that first round was in the process of being ejected, it got stuck in the receiver, and we believe that when he raised the gun, he was attempting to clear that, leveled the gun again, pointed at the officers, whether he knew he cleared it or not, but there were 2 more live rounds that were still inside the gun that were collected.
Thank you. And lastly, you said you showed the video to the family. Did that help ease any of their tensions or any of their concerns or lessen their anger any?
I'm not going to get into, the emotions. Obviously, I will say that it was very emotional for the family, and I can't imagine them seeing the video and seeing what happened. But it's important for me, this administration, that we are as transparent as possible and provide whatever answers we can to the family. So, of course they're going through a very difficult time, and we feel for them.
Commissioner, have you ruled out the possibility this is a suicide attempt?
So I think we've come to the conclusion that this was most likely a suicide by cop situation, and we see that far too often across the country. It's terrible that he was going through whatever he was going through. We're not going to know what was in his mind, what was in his heart, but the only thing we can conclude is that when he calls 911 and puts out a call of a man with a gun that is not himself, and says that there was somebody he was threatening somebody, firing at officers, the only thing we can conclude is that it most likely is going to end up being a suicide by cop type situation.
Did you tell the family that?
I did.
What was their response?
Again, it's a lot to process for the family, so I just, some of the conversations that I had with the family, I, prefer to keep between myself and the family.
Throughout this investigation, is there anything that led up to this moment, why he called you guys on himself?
Nothing that we've uncovered at this time. Again, if there's anybody out there that has any information of what might have occurred earlier in the day, earlier that morning, before. But at the end of the day, what it culminated to was the fact that he did place a call, brought police to that situation, was armed with a shotgun, and did fire at officers. These officers were left with absolutely no choice. And I think you also have to take into consideration, this is a residential street. There's homes on this street. When one of the officers, as shown on body camera video, was walking back to the police cars, he actually said to a woman on the street, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Somebody else was out there. Whether they're out there at the time of the shooting or not, I don't know, but they certainly came out at some point. So, this is a residential street, and shots were fired at. A shot was fired at officers. So.
And when he called, you said that he called and basically reported himself. Didn't say that he was the man with the shotgun. If he would have said that he was having a mental health crisis, or that he was in fact the person with the shotgun, would the officers have approached it differently?
I think the way the officers approached that call, responded to that call, I don't see how anything would have changed. You've got an armed individual with a shotgun in the middle of the street. Our behavioral health team officers were working. It's part of the funding and some grant funding that we have that we can provide extra hours on nights and weekends. They were working, but this came out as a gun call. This is not a call that they would have been dispatched to. Had it been dispatched with him calling in some kind of a mental health crisis, we could have started them on the way, but the way that this unfolded, this was a gun call, and this is how numerous gun calls come in and the response of those gun calls, and I don't see any change whatsoever in how the officers approached that call, how they conducted themselves, how they handled themselves. I think they did the absolute best that they could and with their training that they have.
Was there any history with a stalker, anyone stalking homes?
I'm not going to get into any of the prior calls.
And then second, how are those officers doing, all of them who were involved in that situation?
So this kind of goes into part, we created in the department a mental health and wellness officer. We have a full-time officer that all his job is to look out for the welfare of our officers. So we also have an EAP lieutenant in the department. Both of them work hand in hand. We have clergy within the police department, and we bring all those resources out in an incident like this. There's other situations, of course, that would meet the level of when somebody needs to be looked after. So I was in contact with the officers shortly, within a few hours after the shooting occurred, just to let them know that that we're there for them, the department's there for them, and I'm there for them. I think they're doing okay, but we're going to make sure that that they know that we're there for them and that we have that contact with them. It's a traumatic situation for police officers to be involved in, and we certainly have to be mindful of PTSD situations. So our full-time officer and our lieutenant are going to be continuing to offer up whatever services, and we certainly encourage those officers and anyone else in the department, don't hesitate to make phone calls. They're anonymous. You can contact licensed individuals that we can put you in contact with, and it's all anonymous and confidentiality.
This is hard to tell from the body cam footage, but when Holmes was hit and went down, did he try to get back to the gun, or what exactly transpired there?
So there was some movement that the officers reported, and you can hear them say on the body camera video, roll away from the gun or don't pick up the gun. You never know how wounded somebody is. You never know what actions they can take even when they are hit, and that's why the officers took time, stayed behind cover, and then used a tactical approach to come up on him. Of course, we're going to want to get to him and render aid as quickly as possible, but I also need our police officers to be safe. You never know what could happen, what situation could change, and again, I think the way they handled themselves was with the utmost profession, care for and tactics for a situation that occurred the way it did.
What do they look for in that situation? Just that he stops moving, or what?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, hands. That's the one thing we're taught from day one in the police academy. Hands, hands, hands. You're always looking for the hands. Nothing else is going to be able to fire a weapon or reach for a weapon. It's the hands. So that's what they're keeping on. They wanted to make sure that, that he was not moving at that situation, because if they start to approach an individual in a hypothetical situation, then is able to kind of recover and grab that gun and start shooting, then they have no position to cover. So they were taking their time to make sure that they chose a tactical approach. But keep in mind, right from within the moments that the shots were fired, a third officer was calling for an ambulance right away. So those additional life-saving resources were already called for and were there within minutes.
Do you know which officer shot the most and why one shot 14 and the other 6?
So Officer Slupinski was the one that fired 14 rounds. Officer Lewis fired 6 rounds. I think from what you can see in the video is there was a part of the video after the first shot was fired by Mr. Holmes. One of the officers who had exited his patrol car, and you can see it from the second officer's video, the car was not put in park, and that car rolled and it bumped into the car in front, which was Officer Lewis's car. That caused his car door, police car door, to close, which then took away his position of cover. So it looks like from the video he fired 2 rounds as he was tactically retreating and moving backwards. So there was time there where he was completely exposed and was walking backwards to get to a better position of cover. And at that time, Officer Slupinski was firing to try to end that threat. And I would also say probably providing some cover fire for Officer Lewis, who was now fully exposed at that point.
Anybody else? Are we good? All right, Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.